3:17 a.m. That was the time on the microwave clock when the front door finally clicked open. Tom thought he was being quiet. He thought he was being smart. He thought his wife, Celine, was fast asleep upstairs, oblivious to the scent of another woman's perfume clinging to his coat. But he was wrong. Celine wasn't sleeping. She was waiting. And she wasn't just planning an argument. She was planning an eviction. Most men cheat, thinking they can get away with it. Tom was about to find out that while he was busy betraying his marriage, his wife was busy finalizing it. This is the story of how a late-night lie turned into the most brutal, satisfying divorce in history. The luminous green digits of the alarm clock read 3:17 a.m. Celine Jensen lay perfectly still on the left side of the king-sized mattress, her breathing shallow and rhythmic, mimicking the deep sleep of the unbothered. But under the heavy-down comforter, her hands were clenched into fists so tight her fingernails were digging half-moons into her palms. Downstairs, the heavy oak front door creaked. It was a sound Celine had been waiting for since she put the lasagna in the fridge at 8 p.m., since she turned off the porch light at 11 p.m., since she checked his location on the Find My app at midnight, only to see location not available. Thump. Tom had tripped over the runner rug in the hallway. Again, Selena closed her eyes as she heard the heavy, uneven footsteps trudging up the stairs. She counted them. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4. He was drunk, not business dinner tipsy, where he'd be affectionate and chatty. He was sloppy choices drunk. The bedroom door eased open. Selena didn't move a muscle. She felt the shift in air pressure as he entered, bringing with him the cold Chicago night air and something else. It hit her nose the second he sat on the edge of the bed to pull off his loafers. It wasn't the sterile smell of his architecture firm's office, nor was it the stale musk of the commuter train. It was a cloying, floral sweetness. Midnight rain. It was a perfume Selena knew well because she had pointed it out in a department store 6 months ago, saying it smelled desperate. Tom grunted as he yanked off his left shoe, dropping it with a careless thud. He paused, looking at Selena's back. She could feel his gaze. He was checking to see if the coast was clear. "Selene?" he whispered, his voice thick and slurring slightly. She didn't answer. Satisfied, Tom stood up and began to undress. The rustle of a dress shirt being unbuttoned, the sound of a belt buckle hitting the floor, then the slide of the sheets as he crawled into bed next to her. He radiated heat like a furnace, but his skin felt clammy. He scooted closer, draping a heavy arm over her waist. Celine had to bite the inside of her cheek to keep from flinching. His breath washed over her neck, a toxic cocktail of aged scotch and peppermint gum used in a vain attempt to mask the liquor. "Love you," he mumbled into her hair, the lie slipping out as easily as a breath. Celine lay there in the darkness, staring at the sliver of moonlight cutting through the curtains. A year ago, she would have rolled over. She would have asked him why he was late. She would have cried when he lied about the Henderson project running over. She would have begged for his attention. But tonight, the tears didn't come. Instead, a cold clarity washed over her. It was the feeling of a switch being flipped. Tom began to snore, a low, rumbling sound that usually drove her crazy. Tonight, it was music. It was the sound of a man who thought he was safe, a man who thought he had successfully managed his double life. Carefully, agonizingly slowly, Selena lifted his arm off her waist and rolled out of bed. She padded silently across the plush carpet to the chair where he had dumped his clothes. The moonlight illuminated the pile of laundry that used to be her husband's dignity. She picked up his white dress shirt. She brought the collar to her face. The smell of midnight rain was stronger here, concentrated on the fabric near the neck. But there was something else. A smudge. She carried the shirt to the master bathroom and closed the door until it clicked softly. She turned on the vanity light, squinting against the sudden brightness. There it was, on the inside of the collar, right where it would rub against the neck, a streak of foundation. It was a shade too dark for Selene's pale complexion. It was a warm, honey beige tone. Selene looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired. Her blonde hair was messy, and there were dark circles under her blue eyes. But she didn't look broken. She reached into the pocket of his discarded trousers, which were draped over the hamper. Receipts. Most men were careful with their phones. Tom was obsessed with his privacy settings. His passcode had changed 3 times in the last month. But Tom was old-school careless. He kept paper trails. She unfolded a crumpled slip of paper. The Velvet Lounge. 11:45 p.m. 2 orders of filet mignon sliders, 2 old-fashions, and 1 cosmopolitan. Selene's lips curled into a dry, humorless smile. Tom hated cosmopolitans. He called them sugar water. She took out her phone and snapped a high-resolution photo of the receipt. Then she took a photo of the foundation stain on the collar, zooming in until the pigment was undeniable. She put the receipt back in the pocket, exactly how she found it. She draped the shirt back over the chair. She went back to bed, sliding in next to the man who had promised to love her until death did them part. As she listened to his snoring, Selena didn't think about the heartbreak. She thought about the bank accounts. She thought about the deed to the house, which her father had helped them buy as a wedding gift. She thought about the joint investment portfolio. Tom thought he was the architect of their life. He liked to brag to his friends that he built this family. "Sleep well, Tom," she thought, closing her eyes, "because tomorrow I start the demolition." The next morning, the kitchen was filled with the smell of brewing coffee and frying bacon. It was an aggressively normal morning. Tom stumbled into the kitchen at 8:15 a.m., looking like death warmed over. His hair was disheveled, and his skin had the grey pallor of a massive hangover. He was wearing his "I'm sorry" face, a pathetic, puppy dog squint that used to work on Selene every time. "Good morning," Selene said brightly, flipping a pancake. She was wearing her favorite yellow sundress, her hair neatly blow-dried. She looked like the picture-perfect suburban wife. Tom blinked, surprised by her chipper tone. He had expected the silent treatment. He had braced himself for the interrogation. "Morning, hun," he croaked, clearing his throat. "God, my head." That Henderson project meeting went until 2 a.m. The client just wouldn't sign off on the blueprints. "That sounds exhausting," Selena said, pouring him a mug of black coffee. She set it down in front of him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be starving." "Yeah, starving." He took a sip of the coffee, wincing. "You're not mad? About the time?" "Mad?" Selene laughed lightly, turning back to the stove. "Tom, you're building a legacy. I know how hard you work for us. Why would I be mad?" Tom relaxed. His shoulders dropped 3 inches. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He had gotten away with it. Again. "You're the best, Selene. You really are." He ate his breakfast quickly, checking his watch. "I gotta run. Big presentation with the partners today. Might be late again." "Don't worry about it," Selene said, kissing him on the cheek. "I've got a busy day myself." As soon as his Audi pulled out of the driveway, the smile vanished from Selene's face. She walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. On the coffee table sat an iPad. It was an old model, one Tom used mostly for reading news apps and occasionally sketching rough drafts. He rarely used it for anything personal. But Tom, for all his architectural genius, was technologically illiterate. 2 days ago, he had complained about running out of storage on his iPhone. Selene had casually suggested he upgrade his iCloud plan. He had handed her his phone to fix it. While she was upgrading the storage, she had quietly toggled a switch he had turned off years ago. iCloud Photos Sync. She picked up the iPad now. It was connected to the home Wi-Fi. She opened the Photos app. At first, it was just the usual. Photos of construction sites, blueprints, a picture of his speedometer when he was driving his car too fast. Then, the photos from last night started to populate. The little loading wheel spun, downloading the evidence directly from the cloud. The first photo was of a table at the Velvet Lounge. 2 drinks. The second photo was a selfie. Selena felt a physical blow to her chest, even though she knew it was coming. It was Tom. His tie was loosened, his eyes glassy and half-lidded with lust, and pressed against his cheek, smiling with a mouthful of perfect veneers, was Jessica. Jessica was the new junior associate at his firm. She was 24. She was fresh out of grad school. Selene had met her at the Christmas party. Jessica had told Selene she admired her patience with Tom. In the photo, Jessica's hand was on Tom's chest. On her ring finger, she wore a gaudy costume jewelry ring. Selene swiped a video. She pressed play. The audio was loud and distorted by the bar noise. "Say hi to the camera, Tommy," Jessica's voice screeched. Tom laughed, burying his face in her neck. "Put that away, Jess. My old lady might see it." "Let her see," Jessica giggled, turning the camera to herself. "Out with the old, in with the new, right?" The video cut off. Selene set the iPad down gently. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from a pure, unadulterated rage that felt like gasoline in her veins. "Old lady?" She stood up and walked to the wall, safe hidden behind the painting in the study. She spun the dial, left to 10, right to 22, left to 84. She pulled out a thick manila envelope. Inside were the deeds, the prenup, which she had insisted on, ironically, to protect him from her student debt at the time, but the clauses were standard, and her inheritance paperwork from when her grandmother passed. She took out her phone and dialed a number she had saved under Pizza Place, so Tom wouldn't get suspicious. "Lawson and Associates," a crisp male voice answered. "Mark," Selene said. "It's me. You were right." There was a pause on the other end. Mark Lawson wasn't just a divorce attorney. He was Selene's older brother, and he had never liked Tom. He called him a charm merchant. "Did you get the proof?" Mark asked, his voice shifting from professional to protective. "I have receipts, I have timestamps, and I have a video of him and his assistant calling me the old lady," Selene said, her voice steady. "Okay," Mark said. "I'm clearing my schedule. Come to the office. Bring the iPad. Bring the financial documents. Do not, I repeat, do not. Let on that you know. We need to freeze the joint assets before he realizes what's happening. If he suspects you're leaving, he'll start hiding money." "He thinks I'm the perfect wife," Selene said, glancing at the wedding photo on the mantel. "He thinks I'm stupid." "That's his biggest mistake," Mark said. "How do you want to play this? Do you want a quiet settlement, or do you want to go nuclear?" Selene looked around the living room. She looked at the expensive leather sofa Tom had insisted they buy, the one she wasn't allowed to eat on. She looked at the renovation plans for the kitchen that he had drawn up, completely ignoring her requests for a breakfast nook. She thought about the foundation on his collar. She thought about midnight rain. "Mark," Selene said, a dangerous edge to her voice. "I don't just want a divorce. I want him to regret the day he met me. I want to go nuclear. I was hoping you'd say that, Mark replied. See you in an hour. Selena hung up. She walked back to the kitchen. She took the rest of the pancake batter and poured it down the drain. Then she went upstairs to Tom's closet. She didn't cut his suits. She didn't burn his clothes. That was amateur hour. That was what crazy wives did, and it gave the husbands leverage in court. Instead, she began to pack a small bag for herself. Just the essentials. She wasn't leaving the house. Oh no, this was her house. But she needed to prepare for the war that was coming tonight. Tonight, Tom was coming home to a surprise. But it wouldn't be a warm dinner. It would be the coldest reality check of his life. The drive to downtown Chicago was a blur of grey concrete and brake lights. Selena navigated the mid-morning traffic with mechanical precision, her mind operating on two distinct tracks. One track was screaming, a chaotic loop of the video she had watched. Jessica's laugh, Tom's dismissal, the phrase, "old lady." The other track was cold, silent, and calculating. It was the part of her that remembered she was the daughter of a forensic accountant. She knew that in a divorce, emotions were a liability, but paper trails were ammunition. She parked her SUV in the underground garage of the Glass and Steel Tower, where Lawson and Associates occupied the top 2 floors. When the elevator doors pinged open on the 40th floor, the receptionist, a woman named Brenda, who had known Selena since she was a teenager, looked up with a warm smile that faltered instantly when she saw Selena's face. "Oh, honey," Brenda whispered, dropping her pen. "Mark is waiting in the conference room. He cancelled his lunch." Selena didn't cry. She nodded, clutching the iPad to her chest like a shield, and walked past the mahogany doors. Mark was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. He turned as she entered. He didn't offer a hug. He knew his sister well enough to know that physical contact right now would shatter her composure. Instead, he pulled out the heavy leather chair at the head of the table. "Sit," Mark commanded gently. "I have the forensic team on standby, but I need you to walk me through what you know before we unleash them." Selene placed the iPad on the polished table. She unlocked it and navigated to the banking app. "I know he's cheating, Mark. That's the emotional part. But on the way over here, I started looking at the rainy day savings account. The one we agreed we wouldn't touch unless it was a medical emergency or a house repair." Mark leaned in, putting on his reading glasses. "And?" "It's down by $40,000, Selena said, her voice trembling slightly for the first time. "He made the withdrawals in increments of 4,000 over the last 10 months, all cash withdrawals. No paper trail on the statement regarding where it went." Mark frowned, his lawyer brain engaging. "Structuring. He's trying to keep the transactions under the $10,000 reporting threshold. That's not just cheating, Selene. That's hiding assets. That's fraud against the marital estate." "I think I know where it went," Selene said. She opened a folder on the iPad. "I did a reverse image search on Jessica's social media. Her profile is public. She posted a photo of a new apartment in Lincoln Park 3 months ago. 'New views thanks to my bae,' the caption said." Selene zoomed in on the photo of the apartment. It was a luxury high-rise. "I looked up the building. The security deposit and first 6 months' rent for a 1-bedroom unit there. It comes out to roughly $24,000. Add in the furniture she's bragging about, and the math matches the withdrawals almost perfectly." Mark sat back, letting out a low whistle. "He's not just sleeping with her, Selene. He's subsidizing her lifestyle with your future. He's taking the money you saved from your grandmother's inheritance and using it to play sugar daddy to a 24-year-old. The air in the room grew heavy. Selena felt a wave of nausea. That money represented safety. It represented the security she thought she was building with a partner. To Tom, it was just a slush fund for his ego. "There's more," Mark said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the table. "While you were driving over, I pulled the credit report on the joint accounts. You know the Amex Black card? The one he says is strictly for business expenses, so he can write them off?" Celine nodded slowly. "He keeps the statement at the office. He says he doesn't want to clutter the house with paperwork." Mark flipped the file open. "Page 4. Look at the highlighted charges." Celine looked. The text blurred for a second before snapping into focus. "Tiffany and Cajon said $3,200. The Ritz-Carlton, Maui, deposit, $5,000. Victoria's Secret, $450. "Maui?" Celine whispered. "He told me he was going to a conference in Seattle next month. He booked a trip to Maui?" "For 2, Mark clarified, pointing to the flight details. "First class, under the names Thomas Jensen and Jessica Miller." Celine stared at the paper. A strange sensation washed over her. Not pain, but a deep, icy validation. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She was the victim of a calculated, systematic dismantling of her life. "He's sloppy," Mark said, his voice hard. "He's arrogant. He thinks because you're kind, you're blind. He put the flight on the joint card because he wanted the reward points. Can you believe that? He's stealing from you, but he's cheap enough to want the miles." Celine closed the file. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. "Freeze it," she said. Mark looked at her. "All of it?" "Everything," Celine said, her eyes steel blue. "The joint checking, the savings, the investment accounts. Cancel the credit cards. Report them lost or stolen if you have to. I want every cent locked down by 5 p.m. today." "If we do that, his card will get declined tonight," Mark warned. "He'll know immediately." "Good," Celine said. "But he won't be out tonight. He's coming home for dinner. I want the notification to hit his phone while he's sitting across from me." Mark began typing furiously on his laptop. "I'll file the emergency petition for exclusive possession of the marital residence, too. Since he's dissipating assets, a judge will grant a temporary restraining order on the finances by end of day. By tomorrow morning, he won't be able to buy a stick of gum without your permission." He paused and looked up at his sister. "Selene, are you sure you want to be in the house with him tonight? It could get ugly. I can have a process server deliver the papers to his office. You don't have to face him." Celine stood up, walking to the window to look out at the city Tom claimed he was helping to build. "No," she said softly. "He brought a stranger into our bed. He brought lies into our kitchen. I'm not running away to a hotel while he figures it out. I'm going to serve him myself. I want to see his face, Mark. I earned that right." She turned back, grabbing her purse. "Draft the papers. Cite adultery, dissipation of assets, and emotional distress. And Mark? Yeah? Put a clause in there about the dog. He hates Buster anyway. I want full custody of the dog." Mark allowed himself a grim smile. "Consider it done. Go home, Selene. Get the stage ready. I'll trigger the financial lockdown at 7 p.m. sharp." The house was quiet when Selene returned, a deceptive stillness that masked the coming storm. She spent the afternoon moving with the efficiency of a coroner preparing a body. She didn't pack Tom's bags. That would be too emotional, too hysterical. Instead, she cleaned. She scrubbed the countertops until they gleamed. She vacuumed the rugs. She made the house look exactly like the pristine sanctuary Tom expected to return to, a perfect reflection of the perfect life he was about to lose. At 5:30 p.m., she began to cook. She chose the menu carefully. Bœuf bourguignon. It was a rich, complex stew that took hours of simmering. It was also the first meal she had ever cooked for him, back when they were dating in college, back when he drove a beat-up Honda, and looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. The aroma of red wine, pearl onions, and searing beef filled the kitchen. It was a smell of comfort, of home, of stability. It was the ultimate bait. At 6:45 p.m., the garage door rumbled. Celine stood by the kitchen island, smoothing down her dress. She had changed into a sleek black dress. Not a house dress, but something she might wear to a funeral or a cocktail party. She poured 2 glasses of an expensive Cabernet, a bottle Tom had been saving for a special occasion. The door from the garage swung open. Tom walked in. He looked better than he had that morning. He was flushed with success, his tie loosened, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. He looked like a man who had won. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, the cliché sounding tinny and fake in the large kitchen. He stopped when he saw her. He saw the candles on the table. He smelled the stew. He saw the wine. "Wow," Tom said, dropping his briefcase on the floor. "What's the occasion? Did I forget an anniversary?" "No," Selene said, her voice smooth and cool as glass. "Just a day of reflection. I realized how hard you've been working lately. I wanted to do something special." Tom beamed. His ego, already inflated from whatever praise Jessica had heaped on him during the day, soaked up the attention. He walked over to kiss her. Selene turned her cheek at the last second, so his lips landed harmlessly near her ear. She handed him the wine glass immediately, creating a physical barrier between them. "Drink," she said. "It's the 2015 Silver Oak." Tom's eyes widened. "The Silver Oak? Celine, that's a $300 bottle. I was saving that for when I made partner." "Well," Selene said, taking a sip of her own wine, watching him over the rim of the glass. "Life is short, Tom. You never know when things are going to change. Why wait?" Tom laughed, a relaxed, hearty sound. "I like this new attitude. You're right. Cheers." He clinked his glass against hers and took a long drink. "God, that's good." They sat at the dining table. Selene served the stew. For 20 minutes, she watched him eat. She watched him wipe the sauce from his chin. She watched him talk about the Henderson project, spinning a web of lies about his day. He detailed a meeting with structural engineers that she knew never happened. He complained about a site visit that was actually a lunch date at a hotel. She listened to every lie, cataloguing them, adding them to the mental pile. "So," Tom said, leaning back and patting his stomach. "This was amazing. You really outdid yourself, babe. What brought all this on?" Selene set her fork down. She dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin. "I went to the office today, Tom," she said. Tom froze. The wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "My office?" "No," Selene said. "My brother's office." Tom relaxed slightly. He hated Mark, but Mark was just a lawyer. "Oh, how is the ambulance chaser doing?" "He's doing very well," Selene said. "He's very good at finding things, hidden things." The air in the room shifted. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tom set his glass down. The smile didn't leave his face, but it became fixed, plastic. "What are you talking about, Celine?" "I'm talking about the Henderson project," she said, "and how interesting it is that the project requires you to be at the Velvet Lounge at midnight on a Tuesday." Tom chuckled, but it was a nervous, hollow sound. "Selena, you know how clients are. They want to drink. I have to schmooze them." "Does the client wear midnight rain?" Selene asked. "And does the client usually leave foundation stains on the inside of your collar?" Tom's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, to launch into the standard denial. "It's not what you think. You're imagining things." But Selene reached under the table. She pulled out the iPad. She placed it on the placemat in front of him. The video was queued up. She pressed play. The silence of the dining room was shattered by Jessica's shrill voice. "Say hi to the camera, Tommy." And then Tom's voice, unmistakable, damning. My old lady might see it. Selina watched Tom watch himself. She saw the blood drain from his face, leaving it a sickly grey. She saw the moment the arrogance died. The video ended. Tom stared at the black screen. He didn't look up. "It was a joke," he whispered. It was the most pathetic attempt at a defense Celine had ever heard. "We were drunk. It was just stupid office banter. It doesn't mean anything." "Does the apartment in Lincoln Park mean anything?" Celine asked calmly. Tom's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with genuine terror now. "Does the trip to Maui mean anything?" she continued, her voice rising just slightly, powered by a controlled burn. "Does the $40,000 missing from our savings account mean anything?" Tom stood up, knocking his chair over. "You went through my accounts? That's an invasion of privacy, Celine." "They are our accounts, Tom," she said, remaining seated. "Or rather, they were." "What do you mean, were?" Selina glanced at the grandfather clock in the hallway. It was 7:02 p.m. "Check your phone," she said. Tom patted his pocket, pulling out his iPhone. There were notifications on the screen. Dozens of them. "Chase Bank, alert. Your account ending in 8890 has been frozen. American Express, card ending in 2022 has been reported lost, stolen. Fidelity Investments, account access suspended pending legal review." "What did you do?" Tom roared, his face turning red. "You can't do this. I have bills to pay. I have—" "You have rent to pay for Jessica?" Celine finished for him. "Not anymore. I hope she loves you for your personality, Tom, because as of 2 minutes ago, you are destitute." Tom stared at the phone, then at Celine. The rage in his eyes was frightening, a side of him she had never seen before. He looked like a cornered animal. "Undo it," he snarled, stepping toward her. "Call Mark and undo it right now." Selina stood up then. She wasn't tall, but in that moment she felt 10 feet high. "No, I built this life," Tom shouted, sweeping his arm across the room, knocking the expensive wine bottle onto the floor. It shattered, sending a dark red puddle spreading across the rug like blood. "I paid for this house. I paid for your car. You are nothing without me." "I am the woman who just served you," Selena said. She reached onto the side table and picked up the thick manila envelope Mark had prepared. She tossed it onto the table, right on top of his plate of half-eaten beef. "You're served, Tom. You have 30 days to respond. But honestly, I wouldn't worry about the legal response right now." "Why?" Tom breathed, his chest heaving. "Because," Selena said, picking up her purse from the counter, "I changed the locks on the doors an hour ago. You have a key, but it won't work. And since the house is in my name, thanks to Dad, and I have a filed protection order, based on your dissipation of marital assets, you are technically trespassing." She walked to the back door, opening it. The cool night air rushed in. "Get out, Tom." "You're kicking me out? Tonight?" He looked bewildered. "Where am I supposed to go?" Selene smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that was the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. "Go to Lincoln Park," she said. "I'm sure Jessica has a pull-out couch. Just make sure you ask her nicely. After all, you can't pay her rent this month." Tom stood there for a long moment, looking at the shattered wine, the legal papers, and the woman he had underestimated for a decade. Then, with a guttural sound of frustration, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out the back door. Celine waited until she heard his car start. She waited until the taillights disappeared down the street. Only then did she lock the door. She slid the deadbolt home. She walked back to the dining room. She didn't clean up the wine. She didn't clear the table. She sat down on the floor, amidst the glass and the ruin, and for the first time in 24 hours, she let herself cry. Not for him, but for the time she had wasted loving a man who never existed. But the tears didn't last long, because tomorrow, the real war would begin. And Selina Jensen was just getting started. The drive to Lincoln Park was a humiliation in itself. Tom's Audi, usually a symbol of his status, felt like a cage. The gaslight dinged, a hollow, mocking sound, indicating he had less than 20 miles of range. Instinctively, he reached for his wallet to stop at a station, then remembered the notification on his phone. Account frozen. He drove past the gas station, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, praying he had enough fuel to make it to Jessica's building. He arrived at the Lux Point Apartments at 8:45 p.m. It was a trendy building, the kind with neon lighting in the lobby and abstract art that looked like spilled paint. It was the kind of place he had felt young again visiting. Tonight, however, it looked like a fortress he was trying to breach. He buzzed Jessica's unit. "Who is it?" Her voice crackled through the intercom, tinny and annoyed. She wasn't expecting him. Tuesday nights were usually for text messages, not drop-ins. "It's me," Tom said, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "Let me up." There was a long pause. A pause that lasted 5 seconds too long for a woman who was supposed to be madly in love with him. Buzz. The door unlocked. When Tom entered apartment 4B, the contrast to his own home hit him like a physical slap. Selena's house always smelled of vanilla and clean linen. Jessica's apartment smelled of stale vape smoke and cheap vanilla body spray. There were clothes everywhere. Trendy, fast-fashion tops thrown over the backs of chairs, a pile of shoes by the door. Jessica was standing in the middle of the living room, wearing an oversized t-shirt and holding a glass of white wine. She didn't look happy to see him. She looked confused. "Tom? What are you doing here? You said you had to play nice with the warden tonight." Tom dropped his briefcase on a beanbag chair. He looked around the apartment he had paid for with Selena's inheritance money. It suddenly felt very small. "She knows," Tom said, his voice raspy. "Selena knows everything." Jessica's eyes went wide. "What do you mean, everything? Like, about us? About us? About the money? About Maui?" Tom raked a hand through his hair. "She served me divorce papers over dinner. She kicked me out. She changed the locks, Jess." He expected her to run to him. He expected her to wrap her arms around him and say, "Finally. Now we can be together without hiding." That was the script in his head. That was the fantasy he had sold himself. Instead, Jessica took a step back. Her face twisted into a frown. "She kicked you out?" Jessica repeated. "Wait, does that mean you're staying here?" "Well, yeah," Tom said, blinking. "Just until I get things sorted. I mean, this is my place too, right? I paid the rent." Jessica bit her lip. She looked at the briefcase, then back at Tom's rumpled suit. "It's a one-bedroom, Tom. I have my yoga stuff in the living room, and my mum is coming to visit this weekend. It's not really set up for cohabitation." The air in the room grew thin. Tom stared at her. "Jess, I have nowhere else to go. My accounts are frozen. I can't even book a hotel." "Frozen?" Jessica's voice went up an octave. "What do you mean, frozen?" "She has a lawyer, her brother. They locked everything down. I can't access a dime." Jessica set her wine glass down on the glass coffee table, a little too hard. The fun, carefree mistress mask was slipping, revealing the calculation underneath. "So," she said slowly, You're broke." "It's temporary," Tom insisted, stepping forward to grab her hands. She let him, but her hands were limp. "Once we get to court, the judge will unfreeze the assets. I earn the money, Jess. I'm the architect. I'm the talent. Celine is she's just the wife." "Right," Jessica said, pulling her hands away to cross her arms. "But right now, you can't pay for anything. I just need a place to crash. And maybe, do you have any cash? I need gas for the Audi." Jessica let out a sigh, a loud, exasperated sound that Tom had never heard before. She walked to her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. She held it out like she was feeding a stray dog. "This is all I have on me," she said. "Tom, this is really messy. I don't do messy. You told me your marriage was a business arrangement. This feels like a soap opera." "It's just a bump in the road," Tom pleaded. "We love each other, right?" Jessica looked at him, really looked at him. Without the expensive dinners, the gifts, and the thrill of secrecy, Tom was just a middle-aged man with a receding hairline and a sweating problem, standing in her messy living room begging for gas money. "Yeah," she said unconvincingly. "Totally. Look, you can sleep on the couch tonight. But you need to fix this by tomorrow. I can't have you cramping my style here." Tom spent the night on a beige love seat that was too short for his legs. He used his suit jacket as a blanket because Jessica couldn't find the spare linens. As he lay there in the dark, listening to the traffic on the street below, he didn't dream of his new life of freedom. He thought about his bed, the king-sized mattress with the Egyptian cotton sheets that Selene washed every Sunday. He thought about the glass of water she always put on his nightstand. He realized with a terrifying jolt that he hadn't just cheated on his wife, he had cheated on his life, and the woman in the next room, snoring lightly, didn't want Tom Jensen the man. She wanted Tom Jensen the credit card, and that card had just been declined. The next morning, Tom walked into the lobby of Jensen, Miller and Associates at 9:15 a.m. He was 15 minutes late, wearing the same suit as the day before. His shirt was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. He felt gritty and exposed. He needed to get to his office. He needed to call his own lawyer, not the corporate counsel, but a shark who could eat Mark Lawson for breakfast. He needed to regain control of the narrative. But as he walked past the reception desk, the atmosphere was wrong. Usually, the receptionist, a young guy named Kevin, would nod and say, "Morning, Mr. Jensen." Today, Kevin looked down at his phone, pretending not to see him. Tom frowned and walked toward the elevators. He passed two junior draftsmen near the coffee machine. They stopped talking abruptly as he approached, then whispered furiously as soon as he passed. "Paranoia," Tom told himself. "You're just hungover and stressed. They don't know anything." He reached the frosted glass doors of his corner office. He reached for the handle. It was locked. Tom frowned. He patted his pockets for his keys, then remembered he had left his office keys on the dresser at home, at Selena's house. He sighed and turned to his assistant's desk. "Brenda, can you—" He stopped. Brenda wasn't at her desk. Sitting there instead was Celine. Tom felt his knees buckle. Celine was wearing a navy blue power suit that cost more than Jessica's entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She was typing on Brenda's computer, looking entirely at home. "Celine," Tom choked out. "What are you doing here? You can't be here." Celine stopped typing. She looked up over the rim of her glasses. She didn't look angry. She looked like a CEO dealing with a difficult employee. "Actually, Tom," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet, open-plan office, "I can be here. As a majority shareholder via the Jensen Family Trust, which my father set up to fund this firm 10 years ago, I have every right to be here." Tom's face flushed hot. He had forgotten. He had conveniently forgotten that when he started the firm, he didn't have the capital. Selene's father had put up the money, structuring it through a trust that Selene controlled. Tom ran the business, but Selene technically owned the chairs he sat on. "Let's go inside," Tom hissed, gesturing to the locked office. "Stop making a scene." "I don't have the key," Selene said calmly. "Security does, and they are currently with Mr. Henderson and the HR director." "HR?" Tom's stomach dropped. "Why is HR involved?" Before Selene could answer, the door to the conference room opened. Robert Henderson, the senior partner and Tom's mentor, stepped out. He looked grave. Behind him was the HR director, and behind her was Jessica. Jessica was crying. Mascara was running down her cheeks. She was holding a cardboard box filled with the trinkets from her desk. "Tom," Robert said, his voice cold. "We need to talk." "Bob," Tom stammered, walking toward him. "Whatever she told you." "It's not about what she told us," Robert interrupted. "It's about what Mrs. Jensen showed us this morning." Robert held up a stack of papers. Tom recognized them. They were the credit card statements. "We have a strict policy regarding the use of company funds," Robert said, his voice loud enough for the entire office to hear. "Charging a personal vacation to Maui to the client development account is embezzlement, Tom. It's fraud." "It was a mistake!" Tom cried, panic rising in his chest like bile. "I used the wrong card. I can pay it back." "With what money?" Selene asked from her perch at the desk. "Your personal assets are frozen due to the divorce proceedings, and the forensic accounting shows you've been funneling consulting fees to a shell company that lists Jessica Miller as the proprietor." The silence in the office was absolute. The hum of the photocopier seemed deafening. Jessica sobbed loudly. "He told me it was a bonus," she wailed, turning on Tom instantly. "He said it was a legitimate bonus for my work on the Skyline project. I didn't know he was stealing it." Tom stared at Jessica. The betrayal was absolute. She was throwing him to the wolves to save herself. "You knew!" Tom shouted, pointing a shaking finger at her. "You helped me set up the LLC." "I'm 24, Jessica screamed back. "I just did what my boss told me to do." Robert Henderson cleared his throat. "Jessica has been terminated, effective immediately. And Tom, under the morality clause in our partnership agreement, and given the financial irregularities—" Robert didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "You're firing me," Tom whispered. "I built this firm. My name is on the door. And we will be removing it by the end of the day," Robert said. "Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal effects. You have 10 minutes. Anything related to company projects stays." Tom felt the room spin. He looked at his colleagues, people he had worked with for a decade. They were looking at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. He looked at Jessica, who was clutching her box and rushing toward the elevator, not sparing him a single glance. Finally, he looked at Selene. She stood up slowly. She walked over to him, her heels clicking rhythmically on the polished floor. She stopped inches from him. She smelled of Chanel No. Oisive, her signature scent. Classy. Timeless. "I told you, Tom," she said softly, so only he could hear. "I don't just want a divorce. I want you to understand." "Understand what?" Tom pleaded, tears pricking his eyes. "You've ruined me, Selene. I have no job, I have no money, I have no home." "You ruined yourself," Selene corrected him. "I just turned on the lights." She reached into her purse and pulled out a single key. It was the key to his Audi. "The car is leased under the company name," she said. "Robert tells me they're terminating the lease. You can't drive it off the lot." She dropped the key into his open, trembling hand. "I called you an Uber," she said. "It's waiting downstairs. It's a pool ride, Tom. You'll have to share." Selina turned around and walked toward the elevators, Robert Henderson holding the door open for her. As the doors slid shut, Tom Jensen stood alone in the hallway of the empire he thought he owned, holding a key that opened nothing, while the phone in his pocket buzzed with a notification. Uber arriving in 2 minutes. 6 months later, the ink on the divorce decree was dry. The final meeting took place not in a courtroom, but in a quiet mediation center. The air conditioning hummed, masking the silence between the two people sitting on opposite sides of the mahogany table. Celine looked radiant. She had cut her hair into a sharp bob and was wearing a cream-colored blouse that made her look younger, lighter. The stress lines that had defined her face for the last year of their marriage had vanished. Tom, conversely, looked 10 years older. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His suit was ill-fitting, an off-the-rack purchase from a discount store because his bespoke suits had been sold to pay for his legal defense. He was currently working as a freelance consultant for a small construction firm in the suburbs, earning a fraction of his former salary. He was living in a studio apartment above a garage. "This is the final check," Mark said, sliding a cashier's check across the table to Tom. "This represents your half of the liquidated furniture and the remaining equity in the Audi, minus the legal fees and the restitution you owe the firm." Tom looked at the check. It was for $12,000. A year ago, he would have spent that on a weekend getaway. Now, it was his entire net worth. He signed the final papers with a shaking hand. When he looked up, his eyes were watery. "Celine," he said, his voice cracking. I want you to know. I'm sorry. I really am." Celine looked at him. There was no hate in her eyes anymore. Hate requires energy, and she had none left for him. There was only pity. "I know you are, Tom," she said softly, "but you're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost." Tom flinched. "That's not true. I miss you. I miss us. Jessica. She was a mistake, a momentary lapse." Celine laughed then, a short, sharp sound. "A lapse? Tom, that brings me to the last piece of business." She pulled a letter out of her bag. It had the Department of Justice seal on it. "What is this?" Tom asked, fear creeping into his eyes. "You haven't heard?" Celine asked, raising an eyebrow. "Jessica was deposed yesterday regarding the embezzlement charges at the firm." "I know," Tom said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We were supposed to present a united front. Blame it on a clerical error." "Well," Celine said, leaning forward. "Here is the twist, Tom. Jessica didn't stick to the script. In exchange for full immunity, she handed over all your text messages. The ones where you told her exactly how to structure the fake invoices. The ones where you bragged about tricking the old boys club." Tom's face went white. The blood drained from his lips. She flipped on me." "She didn't just flip," Celine said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "She handed them the shovel to bury you. You're looking at probable jail time, Tom. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion." Tom sat frozen, the check for $12,000 forgotten on the table. The woman he had destroyed his marriage for had just ensured his destruction. "Why are you telling me this?" Tom whispered. "Because I wanted you to know that while you were busy looking for something better," Celine said, walking toward the door, "you were sleeping next to the only person who would have actually stood by you when the world fell apart." She opened the door, letting the bright afternoon sunlight flood the dim room. "Goodbye, Tom. Good luck with the audit." Celine walked out of the building and down the steps. She didn't look back. She took a deep breath of the fresh city air. It smelled like rain was coming, a clean, washing rain. She hailed a cab, climbed in, and for the first time in a long time, Selina Jensen smiled. She was finally free. And that is how Selene turned a midnight betrayal into a masterclass in self-respect. Tom thought he could have his cake and eat it too, but he forgot one crucial rule of life. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, and you definitely don't underestimate the woman who holds the keys to your castle. In the end, Tom lost his wife, his job, his fortune, and his freedom, all for a fling that sold him out the moment things got tough. It's a brutal reminder that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's just artificial turf covering a sinkhole. What do you think? Did Selene go too far with the legal trap, or did Tom get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another story of real-life drama and karma. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.